All right, it's New Year's Eve, 2001, and we're here to record the history of Bob Heller. Take it away, Bob.
Okay, Thomas, I'm going to read a little bit here in the beginning because
Okay.
I typed some of the stuff. I've made a number of attempts. My name is Robert C. Heller, and I was a captain in the U.S. Air Force from November 1941 through December of 1945. I'm writing this story at the request of my children, Robert, Patricia, and Thomas. What I'm writing happened more than 50 years ago, so you'll have to excuse me if my memory is not absolutely perfect. I was born in our house at 1362 Lakewood Avenue in Lakewood, Ohio on December 23, 1920. I attended Garfield Grade School, Emerson Junior High School, and graduated from Lakewood High School in January 1939. I enrolled in Fenn College in Cleveland, Ohio in September 1939 to study engineering. While I was attending Fenn, my high school buddy Jack Bingham was attending Western Reserve University, also in Cleveland, Ohio. He was taking a Civil Air Patrol course, learning to fly a Piper Cub airplane, and he talked me into paying half the cost to rent a plane by the hour on Sunday afternoons for me to learn to fly these planes. In the spring of 1941, we decided to take the physical exam to get into the Army Air Corps to learn to fly for the Air Force. We both passed the tests and were advised that we would be able to be called up for training in the fall of 1941. When the call came through in September to report to Fort Hays in Columbus, Ohio on November the 1st, he decided to stay at home in college, and so I was sworn into the Army and taken by railroad to San Antonio, Texas.
And that's before the war started, right?
That's before World War II started, yes, as far as the Americans were concerned.
Did you think you were going to get into the war when you joined the Air Force, or were you thinking?
I thought I might,
Okay.
but I wasn't sure.
All right.
I was trained how to become an officer and a gentleman at Lackland Air Force Base during November and December, and of course the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor on December 7, 1941, a day that lives in infamy. Lackland Air Force Base is located in San Antonio, Texas, and I was shipped there by railroad, the first time that I'd been such a long distance from home. When we arrived, there were no uniforms available, so that we had to march and pick up trash and live in our civilian clothes. Eventually, we received uniforms, rifles, and began to look like real aviation cadets.
Since you were from Ohio, you had a wool suit, right?
I had a heavy wool suit.
And you were in Texas.
And I get down to Texas and I'm sweating like a pig from wearing this suit, yes. There was no flying here for us. We were given cadet training by West Point officers regarding all military stuff like marching, saluting, handling a rifle, and saying to higher ranking officers, "Yes sir, no excuse sir." When the war broke out on December 7th, 1941, and we received orders to pack up our stuff and report to primary flying school in Pine Bluff, Arkansas. At primary flying school, we spent one half of the day in schoolwork on subjects like flying technique, radio navigation, weather conditions, map reading, and stuff like that. The other half of the day we spent, about 10 students per instructor, with our flying instructor to learn about the two-seater open cockpit primary trainer airplane, which we took turns flying with the instructor. We had to solo within 8 hours, or you flunked out and were sent home to wait for the draft to get you. Eventually I soloed in about 6 hours, and about March 1st received orders to report to Denton, Texas, to basic flying school.
Were those little planes fun to fly?
Yes, except in the wintertime they were awfully cold.
Okay.
We had to wear sheepskin jackets and things, and our cheeks turned brown.
Wow.
In the winter from the frost on them, where it froze them up a little bit and so on.
So they were like crop dusters or
yeah,
planes or
they
something?
would be sort of like that,
Right.
right? But it was a completely open, 2 cockpits, completely open.
Very maneuverable?
Very maneuverable, and you could do all sorts of acrobatics and stuff like that.
Oh, it must have been fun.
With them, so they were fun, yes. At basic school, there were many more flying instructors who were already Air Corps flying officers, and we learned to fly an all-metal enclosed, much more powerful BT-9 basic training airplane. We learned acrobatics, formation flying, cross-country, night flying, and spent just about all our time flying and very little time in ground school.
How many propellers did that have?
Just
one?
one.
Okay.
Yeah, that was a
Still
single engine.
small plane.
Yeah. It was just a much bigger, heavier plane, and it was enclosed,
Right.
the cockpit, so that you weren't freezing. About May the 1st, I graduated from basic and received orders to report to advanced flying school in Lubbock, Texas. At advanced flying school, I learned to fly single-engine AT-6 fighter trainers and twin-engine Northrop and Cessna multi-engine trainer aircraft. We did formation flying, night flying, and cross-country primarily. I chose multi-engine flying and was graduated as a second lieutenant on July the 3rd, 1942, with pilot wings.
Why did you choose that over the fighters?
I had the thought in mind at the time that I might want to try to become a commercial airline pilot.
Okay, so that was more like that.
And that's more like commercial flying than the single engine. Although I found out after the war, when everybody was trying to get a job, that the commercial aviation companies didn't think much of the training that we got, and so I never made a serious attempt to do it. But that was why I was doing it at the time. So I graduated as a second lieutenant on July the 3rd, 1942, and I was given a 10-day graduation leave to spend at home, and then required to report to the 306th Bomb Group in Wendover, Utah, for training to fly B-17 Flying Fortress aircraft. I reported and started flying as a co-pilot in training, and we flew 6-hour shifts, day and night, every day, as the group was scheduled to be sent to England in September as one of the first 4 groups forming the 8th Air Force. Just prior to leaving for England, about 12 of us co-pilots in training were ordered to Boise, Idaho to continue our training to become first pilots. We trained at Boise under excellent instructor pilots and were transferred to Alamogordo, New Mexico by troop train, of which I was put in charge and which I will describe at a later time. After about 3 months, we were again transferred to Topeka, Kansas for further training. It was now January 1943, and I had my own crew, and it was time for me to fly them to England in a brand new B-17 Model F Flying Fortress, of which this is a picture of the type of plane, not the one that I flew, but what the Flying Fortress looked like.
Yep. Oh, it's a big plane. You had a lot of time in that plane before you went over, huh? Sounds like you had a lot of training.
Quite a bit. I don't remember the exact number of hours. The crew were 10, consisted of 10 people: pilot, co-pilot, navigator, bombardier, engineer, radio man, and 3 other gunners.
Wow. So you were pretty comfortable flying that in all kinds of weather and night and day?
No, when you flew this thing, there was no heat in it.
Oh, okay.
And when we flew high, that is up with, under oxygen and so forth, it would be 40 or 50 below zero.
Wow.
And we had to have these big sheepskin clothing and hand covers and boots on our feet and so forth. And it was still very miserable, although we weren't outside, but there was no heat.
But I mean, you were comfortable flying as far as the experience you had. You knew how to fly the plane, right?
Yes, yes.
They had you spend quite a bit of time. What
Right.
was that plane worth? They gave you a brand.
Worth?
Yeah, they gave you a brand new plane. Was it $1 million or?
No, they weren't that expensive. And this was back in early 40s.
Right.
My memory of it is that they were worth about $250,000.
Well, that was a lot of money back then.
And that was a lot of money to give to some 20-year-old guy and say, now take this thing
to England
and fly it over to England.
Right.
Right. So.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Now you're going to tell us about your trip over to England with that brand spanking new plane that you were to deliver.
Right. Right. The it was in January of 1943, and because it was in the wintertime, they said that we had to take the southern route.
Mm-hmm.
And the southern route, we flew from Kansas down to Florida, in fact, to West Palm Beach, Florida, where I have a condominium.
Right.
And the municipal airport there was actually an Air Force
Airfield
at that time. We stopped there and refueled and got all set. Then we went around across the Caribbean. The next stop that I remember was in Puerto Rico, and from there down into South America. And the most exciting part was trying to find the airfield that was up the Amazon River, which, when it empties into the ocean, is 250 miles wide, and it's all jungle all around that whole area.
How do you navigate? You didn't have like satellites or anything, right? It was
No.
Was it visual?
No, you had maps and so forth, and for instance, they would tell you there's an island in the middle of there, and you'll see there are white cows on it. If you pass over there, you go in a certain direction to go to this thing.
You had a compass, right?
You had compasses,
Okay,
sure.
so that helped.
And yeah, they tell you fly in northeast or fly at 90 degrees.
And
or
the navigator would calculate your speed to
And-
try to figure out where you are and all that.
and all that sort of
Okay.
thing. And we got lost trying to find this airfield in Belém, Brazil, right on the Amazon River, which is right at the what do you call it, the thing around the world that's the warmest.
Oh, the Gulf Stream?
No,
Oh.
that's
the equator.
The equator.
Right.
Right. So
You also flew through those Hadley cells, right? You were telling me that the air goes down,
yes,
and when you fly through it, your plane just
Yeah,
drops
it's-
thousands of feet,
right.
right? That was kind of scary, huh?
Yeah.
But luckily you knew that was going to happen.
And because it was so easy to get lost in the jungle, for the most part, they said you fly along the shoreline of the land. So if you have to land, you can try to put it down in the sand, sandy beach. Because if you put it down in that jungle, no telling how long it might take to try to find it.
So your worry is you're going to run out of fuel or something, right? Because you don't have
Yeah.
that much fuel,
Anyhow, we landed at Belém, Brazil.
right?
And the last tanker bringing in aviation gas had been sunken by the German U-boat,
Right.
and so they didn't have any gas to regas us and so forth, and my recollection is we stayed there somewhere around a week to 10 days until the next tanker could come in with new aviation gas. And then we had to take a flight out to the middle of the South Atlantic Ocean to a volcanic island that was just one pinnacle coming up, and the name of it is Ascension Island, and it's a place where the British owned it,
right,
and still do, and they run telephones and lines and stuff and all stuff halfway out across from Africa to there, and then from there over. And we stopped there, just stayed overnight. They had gas and regassed us.
Was that hard to find?
You have to be very careful. They taught us how to fly what they call a landfall. You don't try to aim directly at it, because when you know how long you've been flying and at what speed and how far out you are, but you don't know how it went this way depending on the wind.
Right.
So in order to ensure that you don't turn the wrong way, and this is what they think Amelia Earhart did, turned the wrong way trying to hit an island, and eventually ran out of fuel there. At any rate, we would fly this thing and deliberately fly way to the left of it,
okay,
and fly the required number of hours. Then we knew positively that we had to make a right-hand turn to hit our island. There wasn't a question of are we to the right or the left of it. We deliberately flew way to the left of it.
okay.
And you made a right-hand turn and flew, and they did have a radio out there, and when you got within about, I don't know, 20 or 30 or 40 miles
You could hear them.
of it, why, the radio would come in and you could hear it, and then you could turn your finder in the plane, and it would indicate the direction exactly
Good.
to go. And we made a nice landing on this thing, just stayed overnight because they didn't have room for very many planes to stay around there, and then took off and flew over to, my recollection is it was Dakar. It's the part of Africa that sticks out the most in a westerly direction. And we're trying to do the shortest amount of flying. We landed there, and then we went from there the next day up north over Africa, and I can't remember now the name of the place that we landed at, but it was right along the coastline there.
Right.
And then the following day we took off, and we're going to fly across the
Were there Germans in Africa at that time?
yeah, but not down here where they were. They were way up near the Mediterranean. And
There's no danger. Okay.
Well, we watched out that there might be fighters. If we saw a plane, why we'd sure as hell try to hide or get out of the way.
Okay.
But we were going to fly across the Sahara Desert, and then over the I can't think of the name of the mountains. Anyhow, the mountains were, and then down into Morocco to land, and the mountains themselves were 15,000 feet high, and you weren't supposed to fly any higher than 10,000 feet without, and we didn't have any oxygen in these planes, and we didn't have any guns to fire back or anything. Anyhow, we got up to the mountains, and they were enclosed with clouds and so forth, and we couldn't go through the passes in the mountains at maybe 10, 11,000 feet, and so you couldn't take a chance on. You couldn't go up because you'd pass out, and that'd be the end of it.
How did you get to the other side?
Right. So we had to turn around and come back into the Sahara Desert, and a little place that shows on the map, the name of it is Tindouf, Tindouduf, and uh, it's a French Foreign Legion post, is all it is. And there's a little oasis and a few people in a French Foreign Legion thing. They made some American movies way back in the 1930s there. I can't remember the name of them, but they were kind of famous movies. At any rate, we had to sit there because the storms stayed over the mountains. We had to stay there for a week until it cleared up. When it cleared up, we then were able to fly over and land in the city of Marrakech.
Okay.
And in Marrakech, we simply stayed overnight, the one night while they refueled us and so forth. And the next night, we took off from there, and we flew out into the Atlantic Ocean to fly a long ways around Spain and the coast of France, because German fighters would come out from the land if you came very close and shoot you down. So we went way out in a westerly direction. Then we headed north up to west of Ireland.
Mm-hmm.
When we got up to there, then we made a right-hand turn and flew across Ireland, and we couldn't get any radio signals for directions and so forth and so on until we got about between Ireland and England, and then the radio could come in, and they gave us directions on exactly how to fly to get to the airfield that we were supposed to bring these things in on.
Was that Bassingbourn, or where was that?
No, this was a general thing where they did more work on it. They mounted guns, they mounted oxygen. There was a whole bunch of stuff that was shipped over in boats.
So the plane was just a shell.
And
Just the plane.
And well, it wasn't quite a shell, but it wasn't complete.
Yeah.
We left the plane there. All we were expected to do was deliver the plane to this airport, and we left the plane then, and they took us in a truck to where there were some barracks, and they gave us an overnight sleep and so forth. And then they took us to a training station where they trained us about ditching, because that was a big thing. Out of England, you were flying over the North Sea to get to Europe, and if you went down, if you didn't, you had a ditch out of there. They used to have a routine, and we used to practice it. They call it dingy repair for ditching.
Really?
And every member of the crew had to know exactly where he was going, what window he would go out, and of course the pilot and the co-pilot would pull some gear things to make open up the roof where the rubber boats would inflate and so forth. So when we went out, we could get into those things, and a lot of things about the English, how you talked on the radio and so forth and so on. And so after we had a little bit of training there, I don't remember exactly, it might have been 2 or 3 weeks or something like that, then we were assigned to a particular group to join, and it was then that I was assigned to become a member of the 91st Bomb Group, and after I got there, I was assigned to the 401st Squadron of the 91st Bomb Group.
How big is a bomb group? How big is a squadron?
There are 4 squadrons in a group.
Okay.
And each squadron has, in general, 9 planes.
Okay.
And under ordinary circumstances, each squadron puts up only 6 planes, not the full 9. Some of them are under repair or whatever, and so forth. And usually only 3 of the 4 squadrons fly. So one squadron has the day off. So that group then is putting up 3 squadrons, each of 6 planes, which makes a total of 18 planes there. Now, when they have what they call a full effort, total effort, then that extra squadron flies, and they join it up with the extras from 2 other groups to make another 18 planes. But you flew in groups of 18 planes in each single formation on it.
And you were every clear day you guys were going up?
Yeah, but over in England, we became there about January, February. I don't remember the exact date. It was about March. And in that time, part of the thing, you don't get too many clear days.
Okay.
I mean, it's sort of like, winter's just going, and it may be depending on the weather. Maybe it's 2 or 3 days before you get a clear day, and of course it has to also be clear on wherever you're picking the target in Europe, because you had to be able to see.
No laser guided bombs, huh?
No laser guided bombs. No. You had to be able to see it, and then there's a bomb site that the bombardier uses, but he's got to be able to see the target down there in order to.
So there was a lot of waiting for clear weather for your missions.
Now we used to do other things. I mean, we did ground school and
learn how to ditch,
how to identify
other planes,
and other things on those. I mean, we didn't have all the time off, but at any rate, that's the way that went. And so
so you were over there getting ready to fly your first missions.
I went to fly on my first mission on. I have a little computer here where Tom has put some information in, so I can look to see what it says.
And this actually came out of your log. You want to show them your log? It came out of like one of the first pages. You wrote all your missions down.
Yeah. This was a thing that I got in prison camp, which is called a wartime log. They were furnished by the
Red Cross, I guess. Did they give it to
the
you?
Red Cross, the Swiss Red Cross furnished one. I can only speak for the camp that I was in, Stalug Luft 3. Each officer received one of these, and they had all just blank pages in them, and you made it up as a what would you call it?
Kind of like a journal or a diary.
Yeah, a kind of a diary type thing of whatever you thought you wanted to put in it and so forth.
Yep.
And from time to time, the Germans would pick them up and
censor them.
Censor them.
I could see a lot of pages are cut out.
Right. They cut pages out of them and so on. If they didn't like whatever the material was that you put in there, they just cut the page out and then they'd give them back, and they did that about, I think, once every 6 months or something like that. At any rate, under the list of...
so you have a page there that has all the missions that you flew. Right. Which I guess, compared to others, you flew quite a few missions, right?
At the time,
maybe you want to tell them about your first mission, though, how you lost your crew.
Yeah, well, in order to get so that you could come back to the States, you had to do 25 missions.
Right.
You had to complete 25 missions.
The Memphis Belle, they made a famous movie, right?
Memphis Belle was the first ship and crew in England that did the 25 missions.
Right.
And they all came back to the States, and they made tours around the country, as I understand it, and sold war bonds and stuff like that.
Now, since you were you were just a new crew over there, they split you up from your crew, right? To have your crew go
Yeah.
with an experienced pilot and have you be co-pilot with an experienced pilot.
Right. They on April the 5th, they assigned just me to fly with another crew as co-pilot.
They'd already done a couple missions.
They'd done, I don't know, 5 or something.
Right.
To get experience what it was like to get in there and go up, and what you had to watch and what you had to do and so forth. We that day we bombed some kind of a factory in Antwerp, Belgium,
Mm-hmm.
and we did it okay, and we got into fights with a bunch of German fighters, and we got hit a few times, and so on. And one of our gunners was hit seriously. A couple of bullets hit him, like his belly or chest or
Wow.
there. And so when we came back, we shoot a flare up in the air, a red flare that says, "Give this plane preference to got wounded," and they send an ambulance and a firefighting thing after you as you come in and land, and they did that and so forth. And unfortunately, they got the guy to the hospital okay and so on, but he developed peritonitis, an infection of the in your stomach or whatever.
Right. They couldn't cure it.
And he died
Yep.
from it. I also remember that from that particular flight that the guy that was the pilot that day, who had about 8 missions or something, he finally went to the
Commanding officer and said, "That's it."
commanding officer of the I'm sorry, my memory is
Or the bomber group, I guess.
and said that he couldn't fly anymore, and
So that was a bad mission, I guess, and that was your first.
resign. Well, it was not a good experience, I'll tell you, to have that sort of thing. But
And then what happened to the rest of your crew?
well,
They went up with another experienced pilot, right?
on well, I don't have the.
It won't be on your list
No, because I didn't fly on it,
Right.
right.
But they went up.
But about a week later,
Right. It was their turn.
an experienced pilot took
Right.
my crew, everybody but me, and went on this mission. And unfortunately, they got shot down. And so I never took my crew,
On
my
your
original
missions.
crew,
Yeah.
on a mission with me. They got shot down, and eventually I found out that most of them, they'd been wounded and so forth, but they were, the pilot died,
Hmm.
and the other 9 members of the crew were captured and made prisoners of war. So
So you got a new crew, I guess.
uh,
There were people, they just picked them up, I guess, right? You picked
no,
them up.
I then flew about the next 5 missions that I was on as a co-pilot
Okay.
with another experienced crew,
Got it.
and because they didn't have any more new crews coming in to where they could make switches and so forth. And then when they did, then they took the co-pilot of one of these new crews out and put me. No, they took the pilot out
Right.
and put me in as the pilot of
Right.
that particular.
'Cause you had a lot of experience, right?
And well, I had about I don't know 5 or 6 or 7 missions that I have been on, and
Were most of those easier than the first one, or were they equally as nerve-wracking? Did you always meet enemy fighter planes on every mission? Or were
Yes.
They ever, really?
yes.
You never got
See,
to
we never had any fighter escort at that time.
So you didn't ever get a clean go in, bomb, and come out. They always got.
One that was almost clean, I guess, was when we went up to Norway,
Okay.
there was little or no fighters because Germany had captured Norway, but it was way out of the way and there. But mostly, why fighters were the main thing that we were concerned about. Not the flak, but there. I don't know if you want me to say anything more about the missions that I went.
Well, are
on.
there any other significant ones there
Well,
that you remember? That
I went on one on April the 17th to bomb Bremen, Germany. This was an all-out mission. Our squadron sent four groups of 3 planes of
Or the 18 planes in a group, or whatever you said.
no, in the squadron. We sent our I'm just talking about the squadron now, not the whole group.
Right.
We sent. Remember, I said they had 6 planes and then they had 3 extras.
Right.
They sent the 6 planes together.
Right. And the 3 extras.
And the 3 extras, and I was one of the extras.
Okay.
And they attached us with some more planes from other groups. I don't remember, but I forget what the word they used, but it was like the odd.
So how many planes were flying together?
In total?
Yeah, a lot, huh?
Well, at that time, I don't know, it was probably maybe 500 or something like
500 B-17?
that. In total, yeah.
Wow.
Oh, towards this was in the early part of 1943.
Yeah.
When they got around to 1944 and 45, they were sending over 1,000 planes, 1,000 bombers,
Wow.
and I don't know how many fighters.
So to some degree, there's a little bit of safety in numbers, I guess, huh? If you're with that many.
Yeah, if you got off by yourself, you were in.
Right, but being in with that many people with that.
At any rate, of the planes from our squadron, we 3 were the only 3 that got back because we were someplace else. Our squadron
Oh, the whole squadron got hit, shot down?
and they all went down.
You're the only ones to come back.
Yeah.
Because you were.
No, there was 3 of us.
No, I mean you were in the odd.
We were in
the
the odd group.
Wow.
And
How long did it take to even get in formation with 500 planes? Because they're taking off, right? Would he fly around in circles until everybody gets in formation?
Yeah.
Man.
You take off one plane after another plane after another plane until you get your 18 planes.
And then you said those 18 planes are at different levels and
Well,
kind of
first of all,
staggered.
you start in a big circle. There's a standard way that you do that, and that's one of the things that you had to experience to know how in the hell to assemble.
Right.
And we used to use our marker as the Ely Cathedral,
Okay.
which was north of us, but you could see it any day. It's a great, huge English cathedral with big towers and so forth, and all kind of very light-colored stone and so forth. So it stood out easily. And the main flight leader would lead around and start in a big circle at about. It started maybe 5,000 feet and then gradually climb a little bit.
It's like a spiral.
Like a spiral, and go around, and then the plane that was supposed to fly on his right would get in position and try and creep up to where he got into position. The guy on the left would do it, and there. Then the next 3 planes would be doing the same thing, and you would go around there. I don't remember anymore. Maybe 4 or 5 times in big circles, going up and around until you had your whole group of 18 planes. 6. Here's the lead 6, the high 6, and the low 6. And once you had them established and in place, then the lead guy took off from this thing
Right,
and started on the flight plan in the direction in which you go. So it would take, I'm guessing, you know, something like maybe close to an hour.
Right, to get information, just take off.
From the time that you took off from the ground.
Right.
And of course, by the time you got out over the English Channel, you wanted to be at least at 15,000 feet. The normal bombing height was somewhere between 20 and 25,000 feet. And you didn't want to go over the channel at a low thing, because then the German flak guns, the 88s, they could shoot like the devil at lower altitudes.
Okay, so that's why you stayed high.
So you wanted to get up high to go on that. At any rate, that was the way my experiences started.
Right.
And
any other missions that are points of interest? That was a really bad one, I guess, over Germany there.
that was a really bad one. One that was of interest on July the 24th. They had a kind of a secret mission. I mean, they were all secret. You weren't supposed to talk about it, but this one was a little different in that they explained to us that we were going to fly up the North Sea up until we got opposite Norway, which is way north of where we were located. And then there was a factory in a fjord right on the edge of the ocean there in Norway, and we were going to bomb this factory. And they didn't tell us what the factory made or whatever. And it was a nice peaceful mission. We got ourselves organized. We got in the lane. We started north and went north for, I don't remember the exact time now, but I'm going to say 2 or 3 hours till we were up opposite. Norway kind of swings down from the north to the south in a long thing. And then we made a turn to the east, and we came in and we bombed this factory building that you could see down in the fjord and so on, and then made a big turnaround and went directly back out over the North Sea, and then made a left turn and came back. And we saw just very few German fighters, nothing that was, I don't know, maybe 8 or 10 over an extended period of time. And there was not much flak there because nobody came to bomb that thing there. After we got back, we found out that this was a place where they were making what they call heavy water. I'm no chemist, but heavy water, I think, is like regular water is H2O.
Like H3O or something? It's
either H3O or H2O2. Okay. I'm not quite sure what the...
Is that for nuclear weapons or something?
They can use it in some part of the process regarding nuclear weapons, and the Germans had started the factory to manufacture this stuff. You have to process thousands and thousands of gallons of regular water to out of that collect this heavy water, and then they saved it in some big tanks there, and they were getting ready to, they had I don't know how much of it, but they were getting ready to ship a whole bunch to Germany, and somehow the British found out about this and said, you know, we got to stop them from getting, the Germans from getting their hands on all of this stuff.
Well, did you know at that time what the atom bomb was and all that? Because it hadn't been
No.
dropped, right? So, okay. So later on, it hit you that there was a race.
Well, the atom
right?
bomb was dropped when I got out of the service.
Right. I'm just saying there was a race between German scientists and American scientists.
They were all trying to.
And that heavy water might have been part
Right.
of it.
So
So you stopped that.
almost all of the workers in this plant were
Right.
Norwegians.
Wow.
So what they did was the British on the radio when we were ready to
Told
go
them
in
to
and
get
make
out?
our bomb,
Yeah.
they radioed all over there and said, these planes are coming in and they're bombing this thing. And they also aimed it for bombing at noon, when normally it would be lunchtime.
Okay.
And they told them to get out of the factory, and I understood later that almost nobody got killed
Wow.
because they took it as seriously, and they turned the factory workers loose out of there before the bombing hit, and so it was quite a successful type of thing.
Nobody got hurt.
And
How about now you're on to your last mission, right? Which was probably one of the most exciting.
yeah.
Now you did make it to drop your bombs, right? What was your target on that one?
Not
No?
really, no. Can we take a...
This is your last mission, and what
Okay.
happened on that mission?
I went on a number of other missions, and on August the 12th, 1943, I started on my 15th mission, which turned out to be my last mission as well.
What was the
This-
target?
On this mission, we were bombing an oil refinery in Gelsenkirchen, Germany, which is in the Ruhr Valley of Germany. And what was special about it was that we were losing so many planes that our normal bombing height was between 20 and 25,000 feet in the air, and somebody in the 8th Air Force, some general or somebody, thought we ought to try bombing at a higher altitude. And so we were told that we would go at 30,000 feet in this mission. We were all somewhat apprehensive because those planes had a difficult time with a full crew and a full load of gas and a full load of bombs. They had a difficult time getting up to 25,000 feet.
Was it thin air?
The air thins out as the higher you go, the thinner the air is, and that means that you don't get as much pull on your engines, and you have to aim the plane like up in the air to make it go straight, and it gets very sloppy with your controls up there, and so we took off in the normal fashion.
The fighters can get up there, right? Why were you flying higher? Because the ground?
We were trying to avoid the flak, the
shooting from the ground. They were hitting
shooting
planes.
from the ground with these 88 millimeter cannon up.
Right.
The higher up you got, the less accurate they were.
Okay.
And they thought, well, if we go up higher, they'll hit fewer planes.
How was it in bombing? Are you accurate dropping bombs?
The higher up you go, the less accurate it is.
Yeah, that's what
I mean, ideally, you could drop them from a very low thing, but you wouldn't dare run a plane in at that altitude, or they'd shoot you down for sure. So at any rate, we spent more time assembling and going higher and higher. And by the time we got over to where we were about to make our initial turn and go in to drop our bombs on this oil factory, excuse me, we're up at about 30,000 feet, and we were just kind of sloshing along, having a terrible time trying to stay in formation. And just before we got to the point of dropping the bombs, something happened that is rather confusing, or was at the time, I thought. We got hit with some flak in our number one engine, which is the far left engine, and we had to shut it down. And in that process, we had a very difficult time trying to maintain the 30,000 feet. And then there was another big crashing noise underneath, and I never saw what happened at that time, but it knocked out another engine, the number 2 engine, and I wasn't able to stay up in the formation at 30,000 feet. So I advised the bombardier to salvo the bombs to lighten up our load, and he did, and they weren't aimed at the actual targets, but they just wanted to get rid of them, and which was a common thing to do if you got hit and had problems. And
so now you had to drop out of formation, which was bad.
And now I can't stay up with the formation, and I can't stay up at altitude and so forth.
Because the formation protects you, right?
And the formation is the protection that you have from the fighters.
So now you dropped out.
And in the report that was filed, I got a copy of it a number of years later. I was able to get a hold of a copy. And in fact, in a couple of books that have been published, it says that the last they saw me, I was losing altitude and so forth, and 5 fighters were on my tail shooting me, trying to shoot me down, and then all they know is I didn't come back.
Now you tried to cut across and rejoin with the formation.
Yes.
Because they dropped their bombs and they turned and came across, and you tried to cut across to get
right,
back.
I was trying to rejoin them.
And that's when the fighters...
If we were going in like this, and then we make a turn, and now we're going to drop our bombs here, and then they're going to go out there, and then we're going to turn this way to be going back towards England.
Right.
I tried to take a shortcut across here, because I couldn't stay up with them.
Hoping to rejoin.
Hoping that I could catch them over here and get back in for some protection. Unfortunately, it didn't work out that way, because I got another engine shot out, and now I'm down to 1 engine, and there's no way that I can catch up with them or whatever, and I'm slowly going down.
And is the plane on fire, or the engines are just out?
The engines were basically out. One of them, there was some fire in it, although it wasn't that severe, there. But at any rate, I figured we weren't going to get back, and I gave the signal to bail out. And I could see the navigator and the bombardier. Between the pilot and the co-pilot, there's some steps going down into a lower level, and that's where there's a doorway that goes out the bottom of the plane. And the navigator and the bombardier, I could see them go out and jump out this doorway. And then the engineer who works behind us went down these steps, and he went out there, so I knew they had bailed out. I didn't. The communications with all the guys in the back was knocked out completely, so I didn't have any idea what was happening back there. And so I said to the co-pilot, Bill, before you jump, run back and see if the guys are gone and come up and tell me before you jump. And he went back, and then he came up and he said, they're all wounded and they can't jump.
So how many of those were there?
5.
5 guys?
Yeah. So we decided.
And this is because they were in the back. Those fighter planes were on your tail. They were probably just shooting up the back.
Right.
So they got hit by stuff.
So there had been bullets up before, but more in the back than.
Right, because they're behind you, shooting
right
from behind.
So, yeah, particularly when they get the
so that's when you
tail
decided
gunner.
You were going to go down with the plane instead of bailing out, right?
That was the only way with those guys. We couldn't jump out.
Did the co-pilot bail out then, or he stayed on?
He stayed. He and I said, I think we got to land this thing, and he said, yeah. He agreed, and so I said, start looking for a field that looks like we could land in.
So do these fighters still on you, or they know you're going down so they don't care?
I can't really see them in the back,
right.
You know, to know how many, but I knew that they were still around because every once in a while I'd see one zoom around and so on, and that they were still firing at me. And
at this time, you're just lumbering along pretty slow, right?
Waddling around and trying to go lower, and particularly trying to find a decent-looking field, because a lot of the thing in this area were like pine forests and so forth, and I didn't want to try to land through trees.
So with the one engine, are you able to maintain, though?
By losing altitude, I could maintain.
But eventually, you couldn't stay.
No.
Up. Okay, so you were going down.
And
what time of day was this? It was clear out. And
it was around. I forget exactly. Somewhere between like noon and 2 o'clock.
Okay, in the afternoon.
Yeah.
So
early afternoon.
He found you a field somewhere, I guess, right?
We spotted a field that was pretty flat, and it had like wheat growing in it. It stood out. The wheat at that time looks real light yellow.
Yeah, there weren't tree stumps.
There weren't. Well, none that you could see.
Right.
You know, you can't.
The plowed field, so it's
but it was a farm field.
Right.
You know, and we decided that's the place to put her in, and so we aimed for that and came down. And I remember I put my feet up on the dashboard because I figured, well, this is going to be a. And of course, I don't put down any wheels,
right?
Because they train you. You don't land in an unknown farm field with wheels down. You leave them up and.